into round number 5. Oh, right. I forgot that I was on camera. So, we do our best to try to show as many different players as possible. Cameron was one of our newer faces, lives up in West Virginia, drove down to the shop this week and said, hey, you know what? He hasn't been on camera. This seems like a good person to show up since he is new. Perfect time to throw him up on camera. Just to kind of show off his skills, get people to understand the Amulet Titan list and stuff like that. Jeremy was running it last week, and it has popped up from time to time for those that are familiar with the deck. So we're going to go into this. I'm going to be rocking out Grixis Death Shadow. This is the second week that I have been piloting this list. So I'm going to be trying to improve on my record since last week. Still learning the ins and outs of the decks, but I, am enjoying the play style of the deck. Now, Death Shadow itself has fallen out of favor a little bit more against some of the other decks that are running around in the meta. Like you are facing that red-green Eldrazi that does pretty well in that matchup, right? You're facing down Jund. Jund does pretty well, so it's still a powerful deck, and you can still do really well with it. Just you have to be aware and careful of what the meta choices are running around. Now, I had no idea what Cameron was on going into this, and so that's not making any assumptions or determinations on how to keep my hand, right? It's one of those, well, this is a mystery. Let's try to figure out what he is on, see if I can make it work with the particular hand that I have. And so, starting with this, it's like, okay, there's a couple of things you're on. Ancient Stirrings, okay, there's narrowing it down to kind of like 2 decks that it could possibly be. Based on what you get off the Ancient Stirrings, that'll determine really what deck that you're on. Alright, and so he gets a Bajuka Bog, and so that's in my mind saying, okay, you're on some sort of Amulet Titan style of play. And I'm going to cycle a Street Wraith, go to 18 on his turn. And we're going to play that Fetch Shock game as well. Going for that Watery Grave here. And I can't remember if it's Inquisition or Thoughtseize here, but I do something, and it looks like Slaughter Pact and Azusa with 4 lands. So that's that 100% confirmation that it is the Titan. Alright? So Selesnya, Simic, Bajuka, and Aether Hub are the lands. Then he's got Azusa to play a bunch of lands, and Slaughter Pact. So I'm fine with him having Slaughter Pact. I don't want him to play all of his lands and be able to get a prime time out quickly. So I'm going to be putting a stop to that. So he'll use that and say, that's fine, I don't really care. Here's an Engineered Explosive. And he opted to put it on 2 here. So he wasn't sure if I was running Traverse or Grixis, right? There's no real indication yet on which way I'm going. It's based on what sort of spells that I'm going to be playing. Like Thought Scour here basically is the confirmation, hey, I'm going to be rocking out the Grixis list. You don't really run the Thought Scour in the Traverse list. And now Cameron's like, well, I was really playing this to kind of stop Goyf, and now I know I can't really worry about that because you're not running Goyf. And I'm going to drop down to 12 life. Perfect amount to play a Death Shadow for 1, right? And that is the plan. Knowing that he's got that Slaughter Pact, and then a bunch of lands that I can kind of be a little bit annoying for now. And that's kind of my way of saying, hey, he's got a power of 1. Make sure that you're keeping track of life totals sitting at home. And Cameron going to take a quick gander through Graveyard here, get an idea of what I've got going on, and say, okay, do I care about this Bazooka Bog now to make sure that I could be able to pay for Slaughter Pact if need be? Do I get rid of your Graveyard in case you decide to do some crazy shenanigans and get a Tassiger out or a Gurmag Angler? And he says, alright, I can generate black mana. I'm okay, I'll have 3 to pay for this next turn. Just get rid of it now before it gets too big. Gonna be fetching, shocking down to 9. Rob, 5,000 times 1. Thank you for the follow tonight. Glad you're liking the stream. So, decision makings is, do I make him discard a card, lose one of his lands? Do I destroy the artifact? I think probably making him a discard is the better play than the artifact, because I don't care as much about the artifact, right? And I know that he's got to be using up his lands and stuff like that, so... And Bazooka, he says, I'm just going to get rid of your Graveyard. You can't do anything with that. Follows it up with the Lotus Bloom on Suspend here. Was able to get back... Oh, going to go to 7. And now I get the confirmation. Okay, he's only got lands. But he does have the ability to try to transmute soon. So I have to be careful about that. Death Shadow's the 6/6. Math checks out. Looks like there is an Ancient Stirrings. It says, I'm going to float a blue, play this Ancient Stirrings, see what I can find. Radiant Fountain will... Well, nope. Boros. Aether Hub, he says, use that, transmute, find Pact. Goes for the Summoner Pact, so he can be able to use Summoner Pact, get his lovely prime time next turn. I'm going to fetch shock down to 4. Putting Snapcaster, so I have another beater here. Combat, Teamer Battle Rage. So going through the motions here, Cameron was nice enough to say, hey, if you have it, you can show it to me. We'll go to game 2 kind of thing. Just kind of going through the motions for the stream. But getting lucky in that game 1 where Cameron was slow to get into a transmute, was kind of slow to get hit the lands that he needed. He was doing what he could with the Slaughter Pact and trying to delay things for a bit. Azusa getting taken right away was a little bit painful, but now we can go into sideboard. Another thing, too, was him making the gut call and saying, okay, I need to try to go for this Engineered on 2 because I feel like it's got to be a Traverse Shadow, right? We saw a Traverse Shadow earlier in the night. Maybe that's just what runs around this shop, right? So there is that route of things. So but both players are going to be digging into their sideboards, trying to figure out what might be the best route. A little bit more control side of things could be brought in for Grixis Shadow, saying, okay, do I have more Stubborn Denials? Also, I'm interested in Engineered Explosive, knowing that he's got some cards that cost 0. I know he's got cards that cost 1 that I want to kill. Like, his artifacts are tough to deal with. So I have to be careful about those. I don't want too much of like Fatal Push and stuff like that, because Azusa gets around that unless I fetch, and Prime Time's just too big for it, so that's irrelevant. So that is one of the ones that I'm quick to sideboard out in this position. What's nice for Cameron is he's got to hope that he is able to get things set up with the Amulet. We saw that first game, no Amulet, and so with and without an Amulet are completely different matches almost. So I'm hoping that you guys get a chance to see what it is like when Amulet Titan player has his Amulet out, and the shenanigans that can go about with how much mana can be generated. And looks like a mulligan for me. Ancient Stirrings in Cameron's hand. Couple of lands. One of those, of course, does have the ability to transmute with that Teleria West. It is the House of Cats. I don't know if you guys can hear the cat in the background. Oh, of course we're going to get our garden. Here's our 0-1 plant. Right. And Lotus Bloom suspends for 3. Plant can be annoying just because it's a blocker. It can get in the way. Nice with this sort of list. Looks like going to Shock and Thoughtseize this turn. So there is the Amulet in here, which is nice to get rid of. There's a Walking Ballista, Ancient Stirring, Summoner Pact here. So like I talked about, is the game is very different when that Amulet of Vigor is allowed to stick around. So for those that aren't familiar with the card, again, if there's a card that we're talking about that you don't know, you can simply type !card, type in the card's name, and get close to it. Doesn't have to be exact in the spelling, and you'll be able to have that pop up for you to read. When a permanent enters the battlefield, tap under your control, untap it. An Engineer Explosives, that seems pretty nice to be able to put on one. Teleria West tapped. And it's okay to sit here and play these tap lands like this that have value, because you have those bounce lands later to be able to use. Alright? So, Ancient Stirring is going to get used. He'll be able to look and find, hopefully, an artifact, looking for an Amulet. If he can't find it, and he does. He's got lots of access to lands. So it says, yep, I'll find this Amulet. I can be able to play this Amulet this turn and be in a good spot. And I will fetch Shock down to 13 and hit him with a Counter Squall to put him to 18. Counter Squall, counter target non-creature spell. That player loses 2 life. So have the option to try to save it, knowing he's got like the Summoner's Pact and stuff, but the matches where he's got the Amulet is super scary and hard to deal with. So often to go for that route here. And you can see this time around, you know, I'm much more of this defensive reactionary, and missing land drops hurts. Walking Ballista for 1, he says. That's a 1/1. And we'll return that to my hand, he says. And I'll bolt. He'll shoot me for 1. Alright, so I'll go to 12. Which means that if I wanted to, I can say, hey, let's force the issue, and we can battle over things here. I can be able to play a Death Shadow now if I wanted to. Saying, hey, he's a 1/1. That's what that indicator is. He says, Summoner's Pact. So I should have Summoner Nile here, made him pay the 1, and delayed him an extra turn. Because he needed all of that to be able to cast it. So that was my fault of having the Summoner Nile and not using it there to delay things. I mean, delaying 1 turn is not that big a deal when I'm missing land drops and stuff, but it's still, I think, looking back at it, was the one play for right there that made a difference. So, of course, Primetime resolves. He can be able to find lands, and yep, he does say, okay, here's some lands that I'm going to be getting. Right, making more plans, doing all kinds of crazy stuff. Pass turn. Still has that pack trigger to pay for, so he says, okay, here, I'm going to pay the 4 so I don't lose. Right? It says, move to combat, trigger, declaring attacks. I'm going to find 2 lands. He does have that 2 mana available to him, the Simic Growth Chamber, so he can activate and blow up his engineered explosives here. So he ends up being able to find that Boros Garrison, as well as the Sunhome Fortress of Legion, which the Fortress of Legion gives a creature double strike until the end of the turn, but of course they enter tap, so won't lose to that this turn, but I end up taking 6 damage here, putting me to 6. So I go, alright, coming at you for 6, I know you're going to blow it up, let's just blow it up, right? And with that Bojuka Bong, I lost my ability to play this Tasigur. Not that Tasigur would do much against the Primeval Titan here. And he says, Primetime trigger, and yep, nothing that I can do to deal with that trample. Let's go to game 3. Cameron tying it up. Sitting at 1-1 now. So again, the plan that I'm trying to go for as the Grixis Shadow is fight over those important cards. Summoner packs, fight over Amulet of Vigors, things like that. If he's able to get a Primetime, well, I've got to hope that I'm in a good position to be able to kill that off. I'm wondering now if Liliana of the Veil is the right play to go for in this matchup. Being able to make him sack when he only has 1 creature is nice, but in that sort of position where he's got, hey, here's a bunch of plants that I can just sack to it, doesn't really help out. So, but if I'm able to get it and be able to draw or make him discard a bunch of cards, can help keep him limited on what he gets to do. So Cameron's sitting with an Azusa in hand. We did get to see that kind of get taken care of previously, but we'll see what happens this time with a Fetch Shock Inquisition. And he says, okay, I've got Summoner's Pact. I've got a Primetime in hand. I've got an Azusa. And I've got a Lotus Bloom. So, if you guys are getting into the whole tournament Magic scene, I recommend you write down cards. It makes a big difference on your ability to interact with your opponent and respond to what they're doing. So, get rid of Azusa again. And that could be telling as well of what I've got, if I have removal or not, based on what I take in the beginning like that. Oh, he says, hey, I'll suspend this. Here's my Sunhome Legion. Sunhome Fortress of the Legion. Cycle the Street Wraith. Digging, digging, digging. Going to 15. Looking for some lands, maybe. Scalding Tarn. Looking for more discard, probably. Looking to get a Thoughtseize to get rid of his Primetime. Get rid of his ability to find a Primetime off of his Summoner's Pact. Because if I can get a Thoughtseize, strip away his Primetime, I could try to counter when he searches up for another Primetime.